This is perfect. The Steelers are linked to a star tight end. On today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers reports and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team, as the Steelers have faced some significant injuries on the offensive side of the football. They are linked to a Pro Bowl tight end. Before we get into the latest reports, if you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, only 13% of our current viewers are actually currently subscribed. So if you could click that subscribe button, we are trying to hit that 2K mark. So like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been linked to a Pro Bowl tight end the last couple of days, and the trade talks have just started back up again. An article written by Jack Marzowski, he did say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are back in the race, and they are looking to trade for Jonnu Smith once again, especially after losing Donald Parham Jr. to an Achilles injury. This is a huge loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive side of the football. We did bring this guy in as a little sleeper free agent signing from the Chargers, but obviously he will miss the entire year with an Achilles injury. This is sad to see because we really didn't even get to see this guy play at all, and he is a big body. He is a guy that I thought was going to come in and be a great blocker and great pass catcher alongside Muth, Connor Hayward, and obviously Darnell Washington. So with this injury, the Pittsburgh Steelers are back in trade talks with the Miami Dolphins. This is also confirmed by Adam Schefter. He did say in a tweet today that, back in it, the Steelers have renewed conversations with the Miami Dolphins today with Jonnu Smith as the main talk of the trade. He is seeking a new contract, and earlier on this offseason, he did say he would like to stay in Miami, but, the Dolphins don't want to pay him, and he is on the trade block, and the Steelers are looking to get him. But, Schefter did report earlier in the day that Pittsburgh was unlikely to land Jonnu Smith, and he also reported that the organization was much more likely to get a guy like Gabe Davis, another free agent, who he did get a big payday in Jacksonville after all his success in Buffalo, but, really did not play up to his pay grade last year. And obviously, with the Jaguars getting a new head coach in, Cohen, he did not want to pay the guy, and he said, see you, get out of 10. So, but like I said, Jonnu Smith, his preference is to stay in Miami. So the Steelers could also look to bring in Gabe Davis either or. He is scheduled to come meet with Steelers, I believe, tomorrow. So they could look to sign both these guys, maybe trade for Smith and sign Gabe Davis. It would help our offense, would bring in two experienced guys who could help contribute. If we did look at stats from last year, if we do look at these stats, Jonnu Smith put up a pretty impressive season, put up 884 yards, 8 touchdowns, 88 catches. This is not a season that any tight end is having. Jonnu Smith is an athletic guy. He's been around the league, played with a ton of different quarterbacks, ton of different head coaches, and he was still able to produce in Miami with, the ups and downs of Miami, with the ups and downs of Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle being in and out of the lineup. This guy was still able to produce, put up 88 catches, 884 yards, and was selected to the Pro Bowl. He was the Miami Dolphins' only Pro Bowler. So, coming off that season, I think this is probably the best time to trade him. And coming into Pittsburgh, he would come to a team that does have a better culture, does have a more winning culture than Miami, and, just has a better head coach and Mike Tomlin than Mike McDaniels. Mike McDaniels, he definitely is a coach in the NFL. Whether or not a good coach or a bad coach, still got to wait and see. He's still young. But Mike Tomlin is a guy that he's been pretty consistent and could bring a guy in like Jonnu Smith, pay him and say, we paid for you. Now contribute to us that like a number 2 wide receiver would, because we still really do not have a solidified number 2 wide receiver on this roster. It feels like Groundhog Day. We were in the same situation last year with George Pickens really being our only clear number 1 and not having a number 2 alongside him. And it feels like we're going through the same situation this year, just with some different names. Obviously, we brought in DK Metcalf earlier on this offseason for a second-round pick, but we did ship George Pickens out of town due to his behavior and due to some of his off-the-field issues. So we really do not have a number 2 wide receiver clear and set in stone. So bringing in a guy like Jonnu Smith, you know, he could fill the role as that number 2 wide receiver. Obviously, we do have Pat Freiermuth. We did pay pretty well to be that tight end number 1. But if Arthur Smith wants to line up 2 tight ends at once and, he wants to switch Freiermuth and Smith in and out, or have them both play, or have Washington switch in and out at that tight end position, who knows? But, it's never a bad problem to have more than enough quality tight ends. We look at the rosters of old. With our Pittsburgh Steelers, we always had some great backups. But if we look at teams like New England Patriots back in the day, having guys like Gronkowski, and then I believe they also had Martellus Bennett for a few different years. He was playing great. So, him and Gronk were both guys that were putting up like 600 to 1,000 receiving yards. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to go in that direction, that tight end heavy offense, bringing in Jonnu Smith would be a good idea. Obviously, earlier on this offseason, we did talk about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was another guy the Pittsburgh Steelers were rumored to trade for, but unfortunately, he is dealing with a muscle strain in his foot, and, he is not really playing at all, has not done much at OTAs, so I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers will follow through for a trade for this guy if he still remains hurt and he still remains off the field. But, maybe next year, maybe once he becomes a free agent, the Pittsburgh Steelers could realistically bring him in and, reunite him with his old offensive coordinator, old head coach, and Arthur Smith. But, back to Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith is already also, he's not at OTAs, so this is a clear decision that he does want out or a new contract. He has not showed up to any of their practices, and he is not showing face. So he does want to get that big money contract. And if the Miami Dolphins aren't willing to give it to him, which it really does not look like they are, they probably want to focus their money on some other things, maybe signing Tua to a bigger contract or locking down some of those defensive guys as the years start to progress. Jonnu Smith is kind of getting up there in age. He is 28, 29 years old. So he is a guy that the Dolphins may see as, his best is already behind him. But I don't know. 29, 30 years old at tight end really isn't that old. If we go back in time, look at a guy like Vance McDonald. Steelers traded for him when he was around the same age, and he still gave us about 3 or 4 quality years in Pittsburgh. Had that infamous stiff arm on Monday night or Thursday night football against the Buccaneers. Probably the best stiff arm in Steelers history. Maybe Najee Harris had 1 or 2 better ones. But, I think bringing in a guy like Jonnu Smith would be smart for the Steelers if they can't really find a suitable trade for a wide receiver. And, they just decide to bring in maybe a guy like Gabe Davis or a guy like Amari Cooper this offseason for a few $1 million. I don't expect them to break the bank at wide receiver this offseason, but, making a trade for a guy like Jonnu Smith would only help us out. And we probably could get him for only like a 3rd or 4th round pick, I'm guessing. Maybe a player as well, but I don't think we would have to break the bank to acquire a guy like Jonnu Smith. But obviously, if we do acquire him, we will have to pay the man. Unfortunately, is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. We are trying to get 2,000 subs. Here we go, Steelers. Peace out, boys.